Welcome back. This is Kind Regards, the show. On today's agenda, I'm going to talk a little bit about breaking down larger projects and taking on things that might initially seem sort of daunting and uncompletable, and yet when we piece them down into their component parts, they're actually quite manageable. And this sort of struck me when I was reading Michael Pollan's book, Cooked. It's 4 sections about the 4 sort of different ways that we transform things that we eat, those ways being fire, corresponding to the elements of the earth, fire, water, air, and earth. Fire being cooking over fire, water being sort of enclosed dishes, in cooking in pots, braises, things like that, stews. Air was leavened bread, and earth was fermentation. So you got 4 sections. It's probably 300 pages, the book. And I just finished Fire. And Fire, it's 120 pages. You think, geez, even just writing 120 pages, how could I possibly do it? That seems like so much work. How could I fill 120 pages with interesting stuff? And he does a very impressive job, all credit to Michael Pollan. It is interesting work, and he's really impressive. But I was thinking, like, the Fire, all he really does is he meets with 3 different people who are sort of experts in cooking with flames and smoke. And one of them he meets twice. He sort of meets them and chats to them, and then he goes back and sort of does a cook with him. And the other one he just meets once, and the other one he just meets once. And then there's a bit of history of fire in there and a bit of, interesting stuff, but it's only a couple pages. Each sort of section of that is only a couple pages. Excuse me. And that in itself is not that hard, right? Like, he probably read 5 books, sort of distilled them down, 5 books that are probably pretty broad. So within those 5 books, there's probably 5 books in each that, the cream of those books is sort of distilled into his readings. And so he's read 5 books. He's met with 3 people, 5 times total. And then he's written 120 pages. That's actually pretty manageable, And I'm sure that if he broke it down, into, 200 or 500 word blocks, 500 words on how I felt before going into this experiment about learning how to cook with fire. How did I feel about barbecuing? How did I feel about, cooking over open flames rather than cooking with propane gas, 500 words on that, and then 500 words on, my first impression when I meet this guy and the first little chat that we have and him talking about the culture of barbecue in North Carolina. That's 500 words. Breaking it down into these portions, all of a sudden 120 pages on barbecue or on cooking with fire is actually pretty achievable. And I thought the same thing. I was reading Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian the other day, which, well, I won't get into Blood Meridian, but at the start of each chapter, there's just a breakdown. It's like Toadvine goes to Los Angeles, Apaches strike, a dissertation on cosmology, the judge criticizes, just like these dot points at the start of each chapter that just tell you what's in the chapter. And you can read the chapter and then you go back and you read and you go, oh, that was that scene. Like, it was so small. Like, a dot point was like 2 paragraphs. And then he has this, it's probably 300 pages, maybe more. Masterpiece, this huge book that sprawls across all these different scenes. But at the end of the day, everything is made up of smaller pieces. Everything is atomic. And when we think of things this way, we don't have to write a book. We have to write a section. We have to write today's portion of the thing. And it becomes much more manageable, much less daunting. And all you have to do is make that part good and then make the next part good. And I think we can, well, personally, it makes me feel like the process is much more accessible, much more manageable. Struthless, who's an Australian sort of YouTuber and illustrator and author, I think now, has a great sort of video on this where he breaks down these really big sort of long-term goals into their constituent parts, and he says he makes sure, and I'll link the video because there's heaps more in it than what I'm just saying, but he says I make sure that each sort of square, like each, so he puts them on a little notepad, sticks them on the wall, notepad paper rather. He says he makes sure that each piece of paper, each task is small enough that I can tackle it in an afternoon, that I'm not daunted by it, right? If he writes, draw pictures for book, what is that? 100 pictures? Like, that's massive. That's a huge job. It's scary to look at. It's frightening, and it doesn't get him excited. And yet when we break it down into really small parts, which is draft 1 chapter, edit 1 chapter, edit 500 words, write 500 words, that we can look at it and be like, you know what, I could bust it out right now. I could do that right now. And he says also that he keeps, with those sort of notes, something that gets him really excited. Like the vision, when he writes out the vision of write a book, he doesn't write a book. That's not that exciting. It's a lot of work. He says, like, write a book about mental health that will help people live in the world and help them be free from their, anxieties and depression or whatever. And when he reads that, he goes, yo, I'm pumped. Yo, that's really exciting. Let's get to work. And what do I have to do? Just this one little bite-sized piece, And I think that goes for sort of everything on our plate, right? Like writing an essay for uni, just sending an email to initiate something. Oh, I'm going to start a social work, course. It's like, okay, well, don't think about social work course. Write an email to the relevant person. That you can do in 10 minutes. Boom, 10 minutes, send it, and then the next step will arrive. Sam Harris talks about how there's a big difference between feeling busy, feeling rushed, and simply doing the next thing that needs to be done. Feeling rushed is feeling like there's this oppressive force of a million things you have to do, and it's this long to-do list, and how am I ever going to get it done? And it's this posture of like holding your breath almost, clenching until the whole list is done. I just got to get through this. And you're doing 15 tasks back to back until they get done. And he goes, you actually don't need to do this. You can get everything done, even when you're busy, even when you're late for an appointment. You don't have to clench and be stressed out by your lateness. You can just go, okay, I need to complete these tasks in succession. Let's do them one by one. What's my next task? Let's focus on this, do it well, set that aside when it's finished, and do the next task. And so I think the sort of atomic principle here, that everything can be broken down into its constituent parts, is really good for fighting intimidation, the intimidation of larger projects, ambitious projects. The kind of thing that makes us I talked to someone the other day, and I hope she never watches this, but I said that my wife was writing a book, and she said, I always wanted to write a book. And I said, do it. Why aren't you doing it? And she said, I think I'll wait until I'm old, like an old woman. And, she didn't say much more than that. So I don't know, maybe I'm misunderstanding the point of that. But in my mind, I'm like, you're just not doing it because you don't really know how. It's kind of hard. And maybe when you're old, you'll just magically be able to do it. You'll have the confidence and the drive and the skills somehow without learning them to just do it. I'll postpone it. My future self will handle that. They'll be able to cope. And look, maybe I'm doing this woman a disservice here, and maybe she had really great reasons to do this, and maybe she writes short fiction all the time. I don't know. But if it's in your head that writing a book is in your future, just get going. Just break it down into parts. Say, all right, I'm going to write a really short book as preparation for the big book. Okay, I'm going to write 100 pages. How many words is 100 pages? Google that. Boom, that many words. Okay, I can write 500 words a day or 100 words a day. Make it bite-sized. Make it tiny. 100 words a day for this many days, and then I'll edit, and then I'll have a book done. It might not be good, but you'll have a book done. You'll have a book under your belt, and that would probably feel pretty good. Anyways, whatever it is, whether it's a creative project or otherwise, you know, running, training, whatever the thing is, just break it down and take one thing at a time, because that's the only way that we can manage to do anything ever anyway, right? Is one by one. That's today's reflection on Kind Regards. Thanks very much. Check out the articles on Substack. The link is below, or you can check out the YouTube or Spotify version of this, respectively. You know, depending on which one you need. The link will be below as well. Thanks for watching.